Good morning to all of you. So yesterday we tried to understand the theoretical arguments surrounding the relationship between the environment and the organization. In that we referred that some of the major theoretical arguments, like let's say the contingency theory, population ecology theory, and we found that if you take into account these theories, the population ecology theory, the contingency theory, they have been emphasizing on this environmental determinism, especially the population ecology theory. If you try to enter into the finer aspect, contingency theory emphasized that a particular organization which is able to mimic the same character that of the environment. That means environment has a character. If the organization in terms of its structure and practices is able to mimic the same character, then that organization becomes successful. So similarly, it is being taken up that in a certain environment, more rigid structure becomes successful. In an uncertain environment, more flexible structure becomes successful. When you refer to population ecology theory, in that it emphasized that a particular organization which is able to successfully secure the resources from the environment is able to be successful. So one is saying that if one is able to have a type of character that is similar to that of the environment, will be successful. The other is saying the one who is able to reach to a situation whereby is able to successfully draw resources from the environment will be successful. But anyway, both this theory emphasized that environment has a very controlling effect over the organization. But when we refer to the other theory, the resource dependence theory, though agrees with one aspect of the population ecology theory, that okay, the organization draws its resources from the environment, and since environment have these resources, so environment is going to exercise control over the organization. But an important aspect the resource dependence theory has emphasized. If you take into account the population ecology theory, the population ecology theory de-emphasizes on organizational agency. That means organization having an autonomy to control, to define its fate, has been underemphasized. In fact, to the extent there are theorists who emphasize that the organizational success is a matter of fate, a luck or chance. But resource dependence theory, in fact, they maintained that no, though environment has controlling effect over the organization, but organization, especially the organizational managers, they can actually go for some type of neutralizing techniques. They can go for, let's say, buffering strategies, bridging strategies, number of these strategies, and through that they can neutralize the control of the environment over the organization. And in that particular context, they have established what we can say, the organizational agency, the autonomy of the organization, the autonomy of the managers in controlling the fate or the success of the organization. Today, let's take into account one other theory, a very important theory relating to the relation between the environment and the organization. And subsequent to that, we'll explore today again a very contemporary aspect We'll try to understand the technology and its relation with the organization. But again, I will not be exploring the traditional aspect involved in this relationship between the technology and the organization, because that aspect either most of you have already studied or you will be studying. So those aspects very generally, usually we study. So that's why I will not be raising those traditional aspects. I'll be straightway taking up that in the contemporary period, if you take into account technology, moreover we are talking about information technology. And in this particular context, as far as the information technology is concerned, what are the impact of this new technology or the smart machine that we refer to on the task, on the position, on the organization, its structure, its practices, its values. So let us try to explore this very contemporary aspect in the relationship between the technology and the organization. So before we enter into that, let me first of all deal with this institutional theory. In some of our other discussion, we'll take up something called post-institutional theories. But we need to understand first this. What do you understand by institution? Before we discuss institutional theory, let me give you a small or brief introduction to this very term, institution. What do you understand by institution? We frequently use this term, institution, very frequently. And what do you mean by this institution? Okay, he's using a term, established. We can simply say, yes, we can accept this. An established order or something. In a generalized way, we can simply say anything that is established through certain norms and standards. That means established order defined through certain norms and standards. That is what we refer to as institution. Like let's say, we can say family or the marriage is an institution. Or for that matter, if you take into account, let's say, teaching is an institution. Medicine is an institution. Why we refer to these as the institution? Because this is something established and it is known through, moment you talk about, let's say, the marriage. We say it is an institution. Why marriage is an institution? Because it is something established. And why do we say it is established? Because it is something which is understood through certain norms and standards. X, Y, Z. If these things are there, then we refer it as marriage. Or when you refer to, let's say, teaching, we say, okay, A, B, C. If these things are there, we refer it as teaching. So that is why anything established and defined through, and that is established because of certain norms and standards, that is what we refer to as institution. That means here, we are referring to few things. One, something established, that means something patterned, that is something repetitive. Because the moment you say something established, when you say it is established, only when it is repetitive. That's what we refer to as established. It's repetitive. And the second aspect is that repetitive aspect is defined through certain norms. Norm. What do you mean by norm? Norm means certain ideas that regulate the human behavior. So anything established that is defined through certain norms and standards, that's what we refer to as institutions. Now this theory we are saying institutional theory. If you take into account this institutional theory, it has multiple dimension. It has multiple dimension. It has been developed from multiple perspective. our discussion of the institutional theory will be somewhat restricted to the social or moreover sociological aspect of the organization and administration. As per our discussion, that will be restricted to the social or the sociological aspect of the organization or administration. See, when we refer to the administration, traditionally the administration is known through the rational Weberian system. So when you refer to this rational Weberian system, what are the idea? The idea is that it is a machine. It is defined through positions, hierarchies, that is defined rules, regulations, standardized routines and practices, and it is a type of machine which has specific goals, and its laws, rules, regulation, processes, techniques, all these are nothing but the medium to achieve that goal. This is what we understand when we refer to the traditional rational Weberian system of administration. That it is a machine, is a hierarchic machine, it has specialization, and it has laws, rules and regulation, it has definite standards and routines. Definite standards and routines means well established way of doing things. And it is such an organization where these laws, rules, regulation or processes are instruments to achieve well-defined goals. That is what is the traditional administration, the Weberian rational administration. Moment we talk about institution, and we take into account this idea of institution in the context of organization or administration, this is something contrasting or antithetical to what otherwise we normally understand as a rational bureaucracy. Let me repeat this aspect. So here we are saying, moment you talk about institution, moment you talk about institutionalism in the context of organization or administration, it is something in contrast to, something in opposition to the rational Weberian administration. Before all of you write, listen to this small explanation with somewhat focused attention. Let me repeat this statement again. I'm saying when you talk about administration, when you take into account the traditional administration, the Weberian is the rational administrative system. And when we talk about institution or institutionalism in the context of organization or administration, it is somewhat in contrast with, contrast means what? Is something in opposition with the rational administrative system. What is that rational administrative system? Weberian rational administrative system says that goals are to be fixed. In relation to the goal, the best way of doing job is to be defined. Every position should be a skilled position, and within the organization that should be only focus, that should be focused only on official strategies. That should be only concerned for officially defined laws, rules and regulation. That is what is the Weberian administration. That's what is the Weberian rational system. But moment you talk about this institution, that it emphasizes, you see, when it is a case of administration or the organization, it is not possible to maintain activities, practices, structures within this officially defined patterns. Again, let me repeat. Let me repeat this through an example. Let me take up an example so that it can make our discussion easy. Okay. Okay. See, many of you, no, almost all of you, must have gone through the theory of, let's say, Riggs. Frederick Riggs. Riggs theory, it is in acceptance of the Weberian bureaucracy, or in substantive way it criticizes that particular administrative system. Criticizes? What is it trying to say? It is trying to say, see, Weber is saying this administrative system, irrespective of its, let's say, history, society, politics, tradition, culture, in the backdrop of which it operates, it has certain character and it will operate within that character. Remain insulated from what? It will remain insulated from its history. It will remain insulated from the society in which it is operating. It will remain insulated from the tradition, culture, custom, or let's say political system within which it is operating. That is what is the Weberian view. Riggs says it is not possible. That if you take into account administration, it is not possible that the structure of this administration, or the processes and functions of this administration, or the practices of the administration can remain isolated from these factors. That means the rationality of the rational system cannot be only that is officially defined. Now, the rationality of the rational system cannot be only that is officially defined. Rather, what is also going to be a reality? Infusion, permeation. That will be a permeation. That is going to be an infusion. Infusion of what? Infusion of history, infusion of tradition, infusion of culture, infusion of politics. So that means there are number of things in its surrounding that is going to penetrate into the organization. So within the organization, it is not going to be only officially defined practices. There is also going to be number of things that is unofficial and at the same time non-rational. That is what we have understood. That we have taken up some of these theories and all these things. Now coming back to the discussion. See, I am trying to say, when you talk about the institution in the context of the administration or the organization, what does it mean? It is something contrasting the Weberian bureaucracy. Why does it contrast the Weberian bureaucracy? Because the moment you talk about the institution, it speaks that there are values and there are patterns. Patterns means what? A way of doing things, a way of practicing things. So there are values and patterns, those are going to be a part of the administration that is not officially defined. Moment you talk about institution, this aspect actually comes into play. In fact, one of the earliest institutionalist, or one of the earliest approach in institutional analysis of the organization or administration has been that of Philip Sejnik. While I will discuss the bureaucracy, the death of bureaucracy or the continuation of bureaucracy, in that particular context I will be taking up a number of arguments, and one of the arguments that we will also deal is that of Sejnik. But here, for the purpose of our discussion, let me refer to his idea in a limited fashion. I am saying that one of the earliest theorists in this regard has been Philip Sejnik. Do you remember this idea of organizational dysfunctionality and goal displacement? Okay, no, leave about that. In another aspect we can discuss that. Or simply to brief it, Sejnik, while studying the administration or the organizations, he found out that Weber's claim of universality in terms of its structure and function is not empirically supported. Now, Sejnik in his study found out that Weber's claim of universality in the structure, process or function of the bureaucracy is not empirically supported. It's not empirically validated. Empirically means what? When you study things at the field. So what Weber is claiming, you see, this is the most efficient form of organization. It operates in this way, and wherever you put it, it will operate in the similar way, and you will come out with, let's say, efficient functioning. So he says, you see, when you take up the study, now he took up the study and found, no, it's not empirically being supported. And he found out that administration actually not only operates as per its technical environment, it is not only actually influenced by its technical environment, it is also influenced by its institutional environment. It's not only influenced by its technical environment, it is also influenced by its institutional environment. Let me slightly elaborate this term. See, when you talk about technical environment means, say, I'm doing a job. In order to do this job nicely, I have to rely on certain laws, rules, regulation, techniques, tools. These are the things I have to rely on. So when I say, you see, I am actually following the technique that is most appropriate, the tool that is most appropriate, the method that is most appropriate, the behavior that is most appropriate relating to the achievement of the goal, that is what we refer to as the technical environment. So the organizations are not only influenced by the technical environment, they are also influenced by this technical environment, but at the same time, they are also influenced by their institutional environment. Let me elaborate. What is this institutional environment? See, in a particular environment, there is a perception. There is an understanding about certain type of laws, rules, regulation and methods. Those are desirable for an organization to achieve the goal, not necessarily actual, not necessarily that is actually most appropriate. Rather, in a particular environment, there is an understanding, there is a perception that certain rules, certain regulation, certain tradition, certain practices are required for successful functioning of a organization. That actually forms institutional environment. For example, let's say if you talk about an university or a college or a university, see, moment there is an university, we have a general understanding that as far as the good functioning, successful functioning of the university is required, university is concerned, what is required? That should be, let's say, that should be well-structured programs, that should be faculties, that should be departments, that should be various disciplines, and that should be professors, that should be teachers, and they should be having, let's say, such type of degree, PhD or postdoc, and that should be a lecture mode of teaching, and regular conduct of the examination, and award of degree. These are the certain things that come to our mind, and generally we feel, okay, these things are there, then that is what provides for the success of an university. But see, this is what we understand. That's a generally shared understanding. This is a generally shared understanding that this is what is required, and if it is there, then the university becomes what? Successful. But again, this may not be the actually most efficient way of imparting knowledge. It might be, it may not be. So actually the most efficient way of imparting knowledge is what is referred to as which environment? Technical. But what is generally understood, this is what is required. What is that environment? Institutional environment. So if you take into account the Sejnik, in his study, he found out that as far as the organizations are concerned, they are not necessarily operating as per the rational bureaucracy. The idea of rational bureaucracy, rather, the administrations are very much influenced by its environment. In fact, this particular study, the institutional approach to the study of organization has been studied on a much more empirical and richer way by theorist called Mayer and Brown. In fact, the concept of institutional environment has been studied in more detail and from a more analytical basis by these theorists. These theorists, Mayer and Brown, they have emphasized that organizations conform. Organizations conform to the technical rationality and institutional environment of the society. I will elaborate this. Organizations conform to the technical rationality and institutional character of the society in order to gain legitimacy and acceptance. And in fact, many a time it is critical for their survival. Organizations conform to technical rationality and institutional character of the society in order to gain legitimacy and acceptance. In fact, many a time it helps the organization in their survival. Now let me elaborate this. Again, let's take some layman's example through which let us try to understand it. See, what did I say? Organizations, they tend to generally conform. Conform towards what? Technical rationality and also institutional character of the society, or institutional character more of the environment. And why do they conform? They conform because that is critical for the legitimacy of the organization. For example, if today you are going to start an organization, let's say you are going to set up a call center. If you are going to set up a call center, one, you will certainly take note of the technical rationality. You will take into account, see what is actually required. technically what is required, what is generally understood, technically, so that aspect you are going to consider. But again, at the same time, moreover, you are going to be considerate about the institutional character of the environment. What is the institutional character of the environment? For a call center, generally it is understood these things are required. So you are going to actually comply to that. And why are you going to comply to that? Because see, only when you comply to this, then you are going to gain acceptance from, let's say, other institution, your client, your customer, your suppliers. Okay, you are a worthwhile, you are a credible call center. So unless until you comply to the rules, regulation or practices that is generally understood, is other organizations or no, let's say other entities are going to take you seriously? No, they will not take you seriously. So they will take you seriously. They will consider you as a credible, let's say, institution only when you comply to what is generally accepted or what is generally shared as, let's say, a call center. So for gaining legitimacy or acceptance, you tend to go for what? Compliance. You go for conformity. And at the same time, this is also critical to survival. Why critical to survival? Let's say you want a loan. Banks are not going to give you loan unless until the widely shared parameters are fulfilled. So many a time complying to the institutional environment, it in fact helps to, let's say, legitimize, and second, to survive. But again, these theorists are saying that not necessarily conformity to this institutional, let's say, environment is the most efficient way of doing business or doing, let's say, activities. So moment you conform, why do you conform? Because as you referred, it gains legitimacy, it gains acceptance, but not necessarily it is the most efficient way of doing things. As a result of which, Mayer and Brown says that institutionalization also is based on rationalized myth. Institutionalization of organizations or institutionalization of administration is based on rationalized myths. Rationalized myths. Now what is this? Rationalized. What is rationalized? You tend to, see, organizations generally tend to what? Adapt certain practices, develop certain structures, go for certain type of, let's say, rules, regulation, processes or methods on the premise that this is the most appropriate way of doing things. Why? Because this is well established, well accepted. But at the same time, myth. Why? So not necessarily what generally is understood to be the most appropriate way of doing things might be actually the most appropriate way of doing things. That means the institutionalization might involve a contradiction. Now the institutionalization might involve a contradiction. What is that contradiction? That contradiction between the efficiency and what is perceived to be efficient. So most of the time the organization goes for institutionalization. Institutionalization means they tend to affected by this culture, tradition or what is generally shared about the way of doing things. So they adopt practices or let's say procedure that is widely shared. The organizations are influenced by that. So that's what he refers to as a rationalized myth. That means adopting practices or choosing, let's say, procedure that becomes more ceremonial rather than technical. Ceremonial means what? Something more ritual. That moment I open a school, I have X, Y, Z. Moment I am actually setting up a hospital, I need to go for A, B, C. Something which is widely shared. Unless I do that, I am not going to be taken seriously. I am not going to be accepted. But at the same time, one important aspect this theorists are saying, see, the organization do actually are influenced by the environment. They are very much influenced by the environment. That what happens? Institutionalization happens because the behavior practices that is widely shared becomes a part of the administration. And when it becomes a part of the administration, not necessarily it is actually the most efficient way of doing things. It is only perceived to be the most efficient way of doing things. So that might give rise to a contradiction or a paradox. That paradox is what is considered to be efficient may not be actually efficient. So that gives rise to a paradox. What is considered to be efficient may not be actually efficient. So many a time this might result into organizations operating at suboptimal level. Now, this might actually be the reason for organizations operating at a suboptimal level. So many organizations, they perform at a suboptimal level, less than efficient level. Why? Because most of the time they actually adopt practices that is considered to be appropriate but may not actually be appropriate. This is one general analysis with regard to the institutional theory. But the institutional theory also emphasizes that at times the institutionalization might also result into efficiency. So what is saying? The institutional theory is saying that institutionalization, this is what is a process. This is what actually happens. This is a reality. The environment influences. And when environment influences, the organization tries to create that impression, yes, I am following all these things. Only when the organization is able to create that impression, I am actually a conformist, the necessary support is there. Bank is ready to give you a loan, the customers are ready to take you seriously, the suppliers are ready to take you seriously. So moment I actually conform to these requirements, I survive, or I tend to actually give the impression that I'm a serious player, I'm a serious organization. But this might result into a contradiction or a paradox that because of this institutionalism, the actual efficiency might be different from what is perceived to be efficient. But at the same time, these theorists are saying institutionalization might result into efficiency when it is so. See, institutionalization might result into efficiency when the organization tend to mimic certain successful models or practices. So in some situation it might so happen that let's say the organization is not performing that very well, and there are successful organizations, and this successful organization might have adopted some very new type of practices or something like that. So many a time it becomes widespread, okay, that is the way of doing things. So like let's say the traditional Weberian practice gradually became discredited and new forms came up and new forms became widespread. So when it became widespread, many organizations started mimicking. Mimicking means what? It's widely understood that now you have to go for these new structures. So when you go for this, let's say, adaptation of new practices, which becomes widely accepted, then the perception efficiency and actual efficiency might coincide. But whatever that might be, the institutionalist simply trying to emphasize that the survival of the organizations largely depends on the organization creating that impression of being a conformist. So if they are able to develop that impression that we conform, we comply, we are according to the what you otherwise believe, then the organization tend to survive. So this is what is the institutional theory. Now, before I shift to the other topic, let me generalize these four theories that we took up. See, when you talk about contingency theory is saying, see, there is an actual character. Let's say, the environment is having the character 1, that is A, B, C. The contingency theorist will say, see, moment your organization is operating in an environment that is objectively having a character A, B, C. Objectively. Having a character A, B, C will be successful only when the organization is also developing its structures, practices that is congruent with what? ABC. That means the structures, practices are also having a similar complementary character of that of the ABC. Moment it is operating in an environment that is actually XYZ, it needs to have also the character of that of XYZ. Unless until this is the case, it's not going to actually be successful. Moment you talk about population ecology theory. Population ecology theory is not trying to say, see, the organization and its objective characters has to be similar to the objective character of the environment. Rather it is trying to say, maybe the basic argument might be the same, but it's trying to say, see, if this organization through its structures or practices, or let's say procedure, is able to successfully draw the resources, then it is going to survive, is going to be successful. But see, when it can do so, one argument of the contingency it is taking. It is saying that this organization will be successful in a case when it is drawing resource. And when it can draw a resource, when it will establish practices, procedures that is convenient to draw resource. That means it has to go for standardization. So there are certain types of practices, certain types of let's say procedure through which you can draw resource. Draw resource means for you, let's say for hospital, let's say the patients, or let's say that means they have different requirements. So when they will be able to satisfy the various requirements, when they will be able to establish procedures, practices that is convenient, that is successful in drawing resources. For that they have to standardize. But again, environment is not static. Environment is going to change. Moment environment is going to change, the established strategies are not going to work. So you need to change. So organization in terms of its structure and practice needs to change. But the population ecology theory says changing is a difficult thing. They are drawing it from the structural inertia theory. Change is not an easy, change is very difficult. And not only change is difficult, in human organization, change is near impossible. In fact, they are saying change itself. The very approach to change, the effort to change is not only difficult, the effort to change has also dangerous consequence. Why? Because the moment there is one organization trying to change, another organization trying to change, in fact, who is creating this turbulent environment? These organizations. These organizations taking initiative, they are making for each other the environment more trouble. So in that particular context, not only change is difficult, the perfection in attaining that required change becomes almost impossible. So thereby is a matter of luck that who survive and who vanishes. So in that particular context, the population ecology theory in this particular context is saying, though the organization will survive only when is attaining that conformity. But attaining conformity is not only difficult, is near impossible. So the control of the environment over the organization is something decisive. But when you talk about the resource dependence theory, the resource dependence theory is saying, you see, it depends on the environment. But environment though have a controlling effect over the organization, but organization through its strategies can control the environment to some extent and thereby define its own fate. But see, if you take into account the institutional theory, it is having a different note. Institutional theory is saying, see, environment is going to have impact, is going to influence. The organization can also influence, control its fate. But when it will control its fate, when it will be successful, unlike contingent theory, it's not saying when it will have the same character. Unlike contingency or other theories, it's saying when the organization will create that impression that I'm having all those character that is expected of a successful organization. So when you set up a school and that you are able to create a character to parents, to let's say other schools or the Department of Education, that okay, whatever you actually require to have a school, so whatever, let's say condition that you require to have a school, I have. So moment that impression is able to be created, then the organization will survive. That is what is the institutional theory. All of you are able to get it? So this is briefly the relationship between the environment and the organization. Please, jaldi bolo. Ask. Yes. They are imposing the exogenous changes. Okay.
It is normal rather than the real. It is same as the prismatic theory of the field.
No. See, prismatic theory did carry institutional character. There is prismatic theory. It also explaining certain things. But institutional theory, what is saying? Institutional theory is saying that there is an institutional environment. And this institutional environment is going to influence the organization, and organization is going to have many characters of that of the environment. Why? Because the organization wants legitimacy. Organization wants to survive. In order to have legitimacy or acceptance and to survive, it takes up this character. Because unless you accept those characters, you're not going to be taken seriously. And what are these characters? This might be core technical characters, and as well, it might be some characters that is shared in the society, and they may not be technically sound. In that society, that might be accepted. So that is why both these characters are going to be there in an organization. Okay? Red tapeism in the government of India, whether it is a part of institutionalization or not. It is a part of institutionalization. But as I told, institutionalization has many different aspects. The red tapeism and the institutionalization that you are referring to, that is somewhat what you can say a negative character that introduced into the organization, because that is what? Excessive rule orientation. But here what we discussed is slightly from a different perspective. Slightly. This institutionalization we are trying to explain from what are these shared values, shared ideas with regard to a particular organization in a particular environment. And an organization, in order to operate in that environment, it tends to adapt to those. Because we are trying to understand the institutional theory from which perspective? Environmental perspective. Take it.
Does it also lead to difficulty in bringing changes or reforms in the organization?
Yes, many a time. Because of this, yes. Many a time it creates difficulty. Yes. Anyway, so now, let me take up another topic for discussion. We'll try to understand as I told, the relation between the technology and the administration. But here I will not be dealing with the traditional areas of argument. There are certain theorists. Either you have studied or you will be studying those aspects, and generally that is what is dealt with. I will be typically trying to make you understand, or more specifically trying to make you understand about the relations between information technology, that means the new technology, and information technology and work or organization. Now this aspect we'll try to understand. My explanation of this will be heavily relying on the study of Susan Zubov. See, he is saying that information technology is having a character that is slightly different from that of the old technology. Because if you take into account the previous technology, the previous technology was focused on automation. It is focused on automation. What is this automation or automate? That means the human activities are replaced by machine, whereby with regard to the task there can be higher continuity and control. That's what we generally refer to as what? Automation or automate. So some human activities are taken over by machine. And because of the machines are programmed to do something which is previously done by human being, so that will be higher control over the activity and that will be higher continuity in that activity, because see, human tend to get fatigued. Thak sakta hu, machine thakenge nahi. Human being has number of things, social, psychological, and all these things. Machine, no social, psychological. Doing things according to what they have been programmed. So better control, higher continuity. But one need to understand that information technology not only automate, they also informate. They not only automate, they also informate. What is informate? Information technology not only help us to replace human hands-on activity, that means physical activities. Not only they help us to replace that, that means automate, but at the same time they are capable of recording the activities, developing the information and data relating to the labor process and the productivity or the productivity activities, production related activities. That means they give us valuable data and information. They are able to develop valuable data and information with regard to the job being done, the manner it has been, in which it has been done, the various specification and the aspects, all this. So here, if you take into account the information technology, they not only automate, they also informate. And see, because of this capacity, because of the capacity that they also informate, it brings about qualitatively new dimension to the work, task and organization. They bring about significantly or qualitatively new dimension to the organizational work or organizational task, or for that matter, let's say the organization itself. Now, before we actually detail what are the organizational impacts of information technology, let us try to take a very general overview. Now, first of all, let's try to take a general overview. See, as Jubov says, that information technology within the organization de-skills as well as re-skills. Now, Jubov says that the information technology within the organization brings about de-skilling as well as re-skilling. Why there is a case of de-skilling? Because see, information technology tends to replace many of the physical activities with machine-driven activities. So in that particular context, if you take into account these activities, the traditional, the experience, intuition, that is actually driven into the work, that is actually put into the work in terms of, let's say, manual skill, the human skill, that is actually lost. So many things, let's say, in a simple timber industry, in that cutting of, let's say, timber, or let's say bring about finished woods and all these things, that used to be done through the human being. But see, because of the information technology with this machine, there's an automation. So the human labor is actually replaced. And if you try to understand the manner in which it is replaced, see, traditionally, as Jubov says, the work used to be based on action-driven skill. It was based on action-driven skill. What is this action-driven skill? It was based on the human being, its physical labor, and in that there was a significant input. What is that significant input? The human being used to use its sentience in the labor process. Sentience means it used to, let's say, touch, feel, experience, and do the job. So that type of, if you take into account the productivity, the production was based on action-driven skill. But now, if you take into account under the information technology, as Jubov says, it is driven by intellective skill. Intellective skill. What is this intellective skill? Intellective skill. What is this intellective skill? Because if you take into account human being is not completely withdrawn. Many of the act that previously used to be done on the basis of physical hands-on labor process, that is actually replaced by machine. But again, while the job is being done, data is created, information comes out. Now, these data and these information needs to be considered. And today, the environment is comparatively more diverse. So when the environment is comparatively more diverse, the demand is also diverse. So the product has to be diverse or not? Product has to be diverse. So that means your analysis is required. Decisions are required. So in that particular context, based on data and information, based on the contingencies, contingency means whatever demand is coming, whatever the client is demanding, whatever the customer citizen is demanding. So based on the contingencies, decisions are to be taken, analysis has to be done, and see, that is what Jubov is saying. Okay, see, now more of intellective skill is required. Why that intellective skill? Because the same job, what is previously done through the hand, now is done by the computer, but again, that job which is done by the computer gives rise to number of data and information, and with regard to that job there are certain contingencies, and that needs to be dealt. So information and data that is generated while the job is being done, and relating to that job there are certain contingencies. So relating to that, analysis has to be done, decision has to be taken, and who is going to do that? Can the machine do that? No, machine cannot do that. Human being has to do that. So this is something very intellectually skilled exercise. So understanding data, understanding the information that has been developed, creatively, innovatively dealing with those situations that demands a new type of labor process. So that's what he's saying, that from action driven skill, there is a shift towards intellective skill because of the information technology, and that has resulted into, on one account, de-skilling, but on the other account, re-skilling, which a different type of skill is required. So the traditional skill has been undermined, but a new type of skill is being developed. And here Zuboff is saying that they say this intellective demand for this more, or the emergence of this need for this intellective skill in the era of information technology has given rise to epistemological distress. Epistemological distress. What is epistemology? How to gather knowledge or information, and thereby how to validate that it is actually authentic. That's what is epistemology. I hope all of you understand that. Epistemology. Ontology. What is ontology? What? So the moment you talk about epistemological, that means, see, certain skills. I being an employee, I being a let's say employee within the organization, I have to acquire knowledge. Which type of knowledge? Job related knowledge. Now which type of skill is now required? Intellective skill. And this intellective skill is different from the traditional action related skill. So the moment this information technology is coming, the action related skill are becoming redundant, obsolete, or at least they're becoming not so useful, and giving rise to the demand for the need for the intellective skill. So in that particular context, one, it is a distressing situation for those who have been relying on action related skill. But they now need to know this type of let's say way of doing things. They need to learn this particular skill, knowledge. This is one. And the second aspect is this type of what you say skill. Can it be performed individually, or it requires more networking and collaboration? More networking, more collaboration. Because see, which is this type of skill? To deal with contingencies, to understand information and data, to process this data and information, to understand uncertainties, to deal with complexities. So that requires more networking, more collaboration. So that is what is being referred. This is a skill, and this new type of skill that is actually being emphasized under the information technology, that gives rise to what we refer to as epistemological distress. I hope you are able to understand this concept. All of you? Good. Now this is one aspect that is being highlighted by Zuboff. The second thing is, Zuboff is saying that information technology brings in collision, rationality, and authority. Information technology brings in collision the rationality and authority. Pardon? Rationality brings in collision. Collision means what? No, एक दूसरे को मारपीट करा देता है. Brings in collision the rationality and authority. Now let me try to elaborate this aspect. If you take into account authority as understood from the traditional sense, what is that? Hierarchy will be there. And in that particular context, the superior will decide and subordinate will follow. That's the concept of authority as traditionally understood. But as Zubov says, see, because of the information technology, which type of workers are going to be created? Skilled. And if you take into account these workers, the type of environment this information technology is going to create will require empowerment of the workers. Now let me try to repeat this. Let me try to further simplify this. Zubov is saying कि let's say information technology, you are using information technology, organizations and all this are using more and more information technology. Because of the use of information technology, what will happen? We will require a different type of manpower. Traditional manpower से नहीं चलेगी. So which type of manpower? Manpower that is actually equipped with intellectual skill, knowledge based. And specific knowledge, that means who can actually understand that information, data, understand the changes, because now things are different, turbulent. So there are complexities, uncertainties, all these are there. So we need a group of, and again, this type of skill cannot be exercised individually. Not only an individual has to be multi-skilled, but also has to depend on others. So there has to be more networking, more collaboration. So that means this type of employees are required, those who are having intellectual skill. So in this particular context, we need employees, those are empowered. Empowered means they have the knowledge, they can go for creative decisions, innovative decisions, and say, do you think the creative, innovative decisions can be taken up when it is controlled from outside? No. So that means significant authority has to be transferred to whom? The workers, employees. So that's what Zubov is saying. Zubov is saying, see, another important aspect is the information technology within the organization is going to bring the authority, and it is going to bring about the collision, the authority and rationality. Rationality means what? What is actually required for the performance of the job? What is required for the performance of the job? Networking, collaboration, decentralization, non-hierarchy, less hierarchy, or giving autonomy to the employees. So that means it emphasizes on empowerment of the workers. So when the new technology is going to empower the workers, or it will demand the empowerment, it will demand, not going, sorry, it will demand the empowerment of the workers. It's certainly going to bring the authority in collision with the rationality. The third aspect that is actually highlighting, Zubov says that information technology is going to redefine the control and monitoring system. In fact, while referring to this control and monitoring system under the information technology, Zubov uses a term that is information panopticon. panopticon. What is panopticon? That means is a term that actually referring to a prison that is circular. And from a central place, everybody can be monitored at every time. So when you refer to information panopticon, basically is saying, see, with the help of information technology, now everything can be recorded. Every activity can be monitored. Every processes could be observed. So that means the employees, their activities, their behavior, the processes of the work, everything can be observed through the help of information technology. It is going to redefine the way monitoring and control used to be undertaken. In fact, Jubov says that this the information technology that is going to bring about information panopticon is going to decisively solve the agency problem. I'll elaborate this aspect. Is going to decisively solve the problem of agency problem, or no problem, decisively solve the agency problem. Yesterday I was referring to this term agency, autonomy. So human being within the organization does a lot of things. Does some good, something bad, something positive, something negative. Certain things according to law, certain things contradiction of law. So basically because of this, you're able to now record everything, what you have done, how you have done, under what circumstance you have done, for or at what time, everything can be recorded, everything can be converted into data. So in that particular context, the answerability and accountability can be fixed. Agency problem means people might behave in a number of different ways, even to the contradiction of the organizational requirements. So many a time organization has been struggling to deal with what? This agency problem. So with the help of the information technology, one can solve this agency problem, because here every activity of the individuals within the organization can be recorded, maintained in data, and in that particular context, individuals could be held answerable. But here, few other aspects he has elaborated. Certain positive, certain negative. Now, because of this type of monitoring, what will happen? The impressionist, subjective, qualitative supervision is going to be replaced with objective, systematic, and quantitative supervision. Let me repeat this. That this type of monitoring is going to replace impressionist, subjective, and qualitative supervision with objective, systematic, and quantitative observation. Supervision. Let me try to elaborate. See, in a normal way, how the supervision takes place, the manager in a normal traditional way of functioning tries to, let's say, supervise, even evaluate the performance on the basis of one's understanding. I try to see what you are doing, how you are doing. So based on my impression of you, my understanding of you, So my rating of what you are doing, what are your weaknesses and what are your strengths, your achievements or your failures, is moreover based on my impression of what are you, what are your skill, how are you doing, what are your weaknesses. So it is impressionist, subjective. Why subjective? Because what I think of you. So the supervision is more impressionist, subjective and qualitative. But moment I'm using information technology, my supervision is moreover based on what? Data. So moment it is based on data. What you have achieved, what you have not achieved. How many things you have done, how many things you have not done. When you are there, when you are not there. Everything is recorded, everything is maintained through hard data. Moment is maintained through hard data, my supervision will be more not based on my understanding of what you are, rather what actually you have done. More objective, more systematic and more quantitative. So the supervision, accountability, the answerability is not based on what you can simply say the qualitative, impressionist or subjective, rather it is more objective, systematic and quantitative. In fact, it has a negative aspect. A very significant negative aspect. Certain positive aspect might be there. What positive aspect? Because see, in this case, subjectivity goes down, objectivity goes up. तो जैसे ही मैंने रिकॉर्ड करके सब रखा, तो उसमें आप ना, I am going to define your behavior on the basis of something which is not what I think. So that objectivity goes up. So no, that's a more quantitative. That's a good aspect, because my subjectivity means my bias, my prejudice, all these are reduced. But what is actually another aspect? Because see, through the information technology, what is happening? The human relation management approach is being replaced with the interpretation of data approach. So in order to increase efficiency, we have been studying that we should focus on what? Human being, human relation. But again, because of this information technology, interaction is going to stop. Face-to-face interaction is going to be minimum or is going to be reduced. No, it's going to be simply eliminated. And moreover, the assessment is going to be based on hard data. So the human relation based production efficiency approach is going to be replaced with data interpretation approach. So basically, the managerial approach is going to be more on the basis of comprehension and interpretation rather than human relation, because many times it's actually going to reduce things. So this has its own, what you say, danger also. So this is a general observation that Zubov has taken while referring to the information technology and its relation with organization. Now let us try to explore certain other aspects. See, when we try to take note of the relation between the organizational, let's say, theory, its growth, its all these things, the evolution of the organizations, and the information technology, there are many questions that generally comes up. Now, some of the fundamental questions are whether organizational change is bringing about the more and more use of information technology, or the increase in the information technology is bringing about organizational change. There might be a question. Somebody might say, okay, maybe the reform in the organization is introducing more and more information technology. We might think, okay, it might be a case, okay, since organizational are changing, organizational structures are changing, organizational reforms are coming, so there is more and more information technology. Or somebody else might say, no, that may not be the case. It might be so, since information technology is actually increasing, its impact, its intensity, its influence is increasing, so that is organizational change. What is actually the real view? If you try to understand, if you try to actually take note of this, we will find that neither of this view is correct. Neither the organizational change is pushing information technology, or neither the organizational change is making more and more information technology to be introduced, nor the increase in the information technology is bringing about organizational change. Rather, there has been two independent processes, and there has been, in the contemporary perspective, a merger or juxtaposition. Now let me repeat this. See, one of the major questions that actually raised in the recent period is whether organizational reform is driving towards the introduction of more and more information technology, or the increase in the information technology is bringing about more and more organizational change. In fact, if you try to understand closely, take up a more critical view, we will find that neither of this view is correct. Rather, there has been two independent developments. Organizational change has been happening. Information technology has been improving. Technology has been improving, increasing. And in the contemporary perspective, they have come together, and that is a juxtaposition. Because if you try to take into account the organizational change, traditionally, whether in the private or in the government, the organizational form that has been adopted and usually been the practice is the Weberian bureaucratic form. Famously, we also refer to as Fordism. That means the traditional rational system of administration. And towards, if you take into account the 60s and 70s, this is the period, 70s. Not only in the private sector, but also in the government. And more particularly in the private sector, because the intolerance towards the malperformance is generally higher in which sector? Private sector. So if you take into account towards the 1970s, there has been the crisis of this Fordist way of doing things, Fordist, the Fordism as an organizational system, Fordism as a productive system. So it has increasingly come under stress. In fact, in the backdrop of this crisis, there has been development of alternative organizational form. Moreover, the famous Japanese style of administration significantly represented through Toyotaism. That is also we study through number of other theories. One of the most famous or popularly known theory that many of you must have already gone through, that is the William Auchi's theory Z. Now, few of you might have already gone through. A number of other aspects you will be reading. That right in the 60s, moreover towards the 70s, alternative organizational forms has been already there. And if you take into account, let's say, technology, especially this digital communication, or let's say this information technology, this aspect, this has been actually becoming more intense towards the mid of 1980s, and subsequent to mid of 1980s it has actually increased at a faster pace. So organizational innovation has been prior to that information revolution. No, organization, it's not that. That means one thing is very clear. One thing is very clear, that not necessarily the information technology has driven the organizational change. The organizational change, because this organizational changes or the alternative organizational form has been there during 1960s, there during 1970s. And if we talk about information revolution, that is a phenomenon towards the 1980s and onwards. So the organizational change very much precedes the information revolution. And if you take into account information revolution, certainly it is independent of this organizational change. It's a matter of science and technology. But one thing is very clear, that in the contemporary context, in the recent context, the alternative organizational forms and the information technology, the information revolution has not only come together, they are mutually reinforcing. They have not only come together, new organizational forms are increasingly using this particular type of technology. So not only they have come together, they are mutually reinforcing. Now it is important to understand, in this particular context, it is important to understand that what are the organizational impacts of information technology, and in that particular context, what could be its impact on the new organizational form, and what are the consequences. Okay? So now let's take into account what are the organizational impact of information technology, and while dealing with this, let us also try to understand what is the impact with regard to the new organizational forms. And while discussing that, let us also try to understand its consequences. So there is quite a few organizational impacts of information technology. Those being, first, information technology has resulted into value additions. As already we have discussed while taking up some of the analysis of Zuboff, that today, as far as the product is concerned, services are concerned, so whether it is actually related to producing a particular good in terms of toys, or providing certain services like, let's say, education or health, or products like, let's say, telecommunication devices, or service like, let's say, telecommunication. Now these are being provided in many diverse ways, in many different ways. Why? Because see, if you take into account citizen today, or in the private sector, the customer today, the taste is diverse, the requirement is very diverse, the demand is as well very diverse. So that means, as far as the production is concerned, the production of goods and production of services, it has to address to this need for diversity. So when you are actually producing something, we have to keep an eye on what? This need for diversity. So in this particular context, the information technology has helped. The need for help the employees, help the organizations, in fact, to innovate, to create, and thereby provide the products in these diverse ways. So previously, what was the case? Anything it was something stereotyped, defined, but the procedure used to be standardized, routinized. So it used to be defined in advance. Okay, this is what we are going to provide, and this is the way we have to do it. Now simply, if you are actually providing something called an automobile, let me give a small example so that we are able to understand this. See, Ford Motor was a very big organization, a very successful organization. But a Japanese organization, Toyota, towards the 70s and 80s, outsmarted this particular organization. And see, they are known for two different ways of dealing with their job. If you take into account Ford Motors, traditionally it was based on assembly line production, something Weberian approach, Taylorian approach. So in that, what is the case? Everything is defined in advance. So the moment everything is defined, every aspect, every activity is defined in advance, and every individual is doing one job. So every individual is doing one job, so defined job of an individual. Its job is already defined, and the entire process is defined. In that brings about rigidity. That brings about rigidity because moment everything is already defined and every individual job is already defined, it brings about what? Huge rigidity. So in that type of work environment, you will produce a product which is very few in its classification or very diverse in its classification. Very few. But see, today we need cars of different type, different choices, and different market segment. In Germany, we need the same car in a different way. In India, you might be requiring the same car in a different way. In China, that might be in a different way. In Japan, that might be in a different way. So you need to actually go for what? Diversity. So in that particular context, if you follow the same process, what is the process? Everything is standardized, Weberian approach. Everything is standardized, everything is routinized, decided at the top and followed by the bottom. So this brings about huge rigidity. So that will not be able to address the need for diversity. But in the contemporary context, we need to understand uncertainty. We need the capacity to understand the complexity. That means we need the capacity to understand the contingency. And according to the contingency, we need to innovate, create. So in that particular context, not only through this, we'll be able to address the need for diversity. So as the study indicates, the information technology provides this capacity to address the need for diversity. Why? Because through information technology, you can simulate. You can go for advanced forecasting. You can go for real-time feedback. You immediately will get feedback on whatever you are doing. You can simulate. Simulate means practice. You can, in a virtual space within the computer, through the use of operation research or sophisticated mathematical formulae, you can mimic the actual situation. You can imitate the actual situation. So you can go for an advanced forecasting. So the information technology provides this capacity of simulation, real-time feedback, advanced forecasting. So thereby empowers the organization and employees for addressing the contingencies, complexities, uncertainties, or for that matter, appreciating the diversity. This is one of the major impact. No, one of the major impact is that it in fact helps the organization to go for value addition, to address to, let's say, the what you can say, uncertainties, or take up diversity. Second is, it can bring in efficiency. It can bring in efficiency. Now, simply because it can automate, information technology can automate. That means number of routine practices can be taken up by machine. Not only it actually provides efficiency, it creates efficiency within the organization through automation. It also increases efficiency through informative capability. What is informative capability? Informative capability is the information technology can help to develop data, to create information, and thereby, as a theorist called Manuel Cashel, he says that the information technology increases the input of the human brain into the productive process. That's what earlier we discussed as intellective skill. The Manuel Cashel says, see, information technology not only automate, because through automation also it can create efficiency. But that is not the actual strength of information technology, something different from the previous technology. Because it can also informate. So that means it can create data, it can create information, it can provide you valuable insight, it can give you valuable projections, it can make for you very valuable, accurate predictions. So in that particular context, the human being is to have an additional capacity. What is the capacity? Human being can use its knowledge, it can use its brain to analyze those data, to take help of that data, and can go for very creative, innovative decision making. That's what Manuel Cashel says. It increases the information technology, increases the input of the human brain into the productive process. So thereby it enhances efficiency. The third aspect is information technology introduces open process into the organizational functioning. So information technology introduces open process into the organization or organizational work. In order to make you understand this, let me again refer to the Weberian bureaucracy. See, the traditional rational system that is defined by Weberian bureaucracy is based on that closed process. Why it is a closed process? Because in that the approach is the superior will take a decision relating to the job, and that decision will be about standardizing the job. What is the job? What is the objective? What tools is to be used? what processes to be followed, what laws and rules needs to be abided by, what is the time within things, everything is actually defined. That's a closed process. But as in the organization where there is information technology, there's a need for open process. What is that open process? See, in advance you cannot define what rules to follow, or you cannot in advance define the nitty-gritty of the way of doing the job. So that means you cannot go for standardizing. Rather, in an organization where the information technology is going to be used, there the emphasis will be more on the collaboration, networking, or use of this intellective skill, more of consultation, more of interaction. But that will be required. So that's what is referred to as open process. So that means in a organization where there is more and more emphasis on information technology, that will also be more and more emphasis on team, let's say, approach, project approach, task-based approach, not job-oriented approach. Task-oriented approach, project-based approach, team-based approach. So this will be another important implication for the organization. The next is, see, if you take into account the information technology, another important impact is somewhat extension of the argument that we gave now. That is, it is going to help bring about groupware, groupware, W-A-R-E, groupware, like let's say decisional support system, management information system. Groupware, where you can understand this is referring to what? Software. No, we say when we talk about group, that means it is a type of system where large number of people, they can operate simultaneously. So with the moment we have this information technology can facilitate the introduction of management information system or decisional support system or such type of arrangement whereby individuals, irrespective of their hierarchy or irrespective of their functional, irrespective of their association in different projects or teams, they can have access to, let's say, information, relevant information for making decisions. So another impact that's key, because in traditional Weberian bureaucracy, what is the case? There's a restriction in terms of access to information. So in this particular context, another aspect might be that if you take into account the individuals within this type of organization, they might have an higher access to information, freer access to, moreover, freer access to information. So it can help facilitate the introduction of certain types of groupware, like let's say all of you study something called management information system. or moreover another important thing like, let's say, decisional support system. So this can be another impact, another important impact on the organization. As already we have discussed another aspect, that is, say, if you take into account the information technology might bring within the organization enhanced rationality or enlarged, moreover it's more accurate to say enlarged rationality. Let me explain what is this enlarged rationality. See, there is a statement by Charles Pandey. I would urge, don't worry about the names and all these things. Okay? Can memorize, may not memorize. But do remember all these themes. Because whoever, there might be on the same theme, there might be 10 different people who have stated. So don't worry about these names. Or few names if you can actually carry, at least for your optional, that will be good. But whenever in the paper you see a name, don't get baffled. Now only try to read the statement or the the question and try to figure out what is the theme of that particular statement or the question. And from there you start writing with confidence. And but carefully. Okay. See, let me actually try to explain this particular aspect. We are saying that information technology had another critical effect on the organization. That is, it brings about enlarged rationalities. In order to explain that, let me bring in this theorist. Not exactly the statement, because the moment I say statement, that means again the same line, same words and all this thing. I'm very poor at restating the statements. In fact, I will be stating the view of Charles Pandey. Pandey says that the information technology increases the ability of the organizations and its employees to balance the essential attributes in an age of paradox. In an age of paradox. He's saying today is an age of paradox. And the information technology helps the organization and its employees to increase the capability of this organization. It helps to increase the capability of the employees of this organization to balance. What to balance? Certain essentialities. Essentially, which is otherwise considered to be somewhat contradictory. That's what it says in an age of paradox. Like let's say, today we want things to be of higher quality. But while we want things at a higher quality, we might actually require that at a lower cost. Normal understanding, the common sensical understanding goes, moment you are working on quality, maybe the cost will go up. But today, there is a demand of more and more higher quality things at a lower cost. So possibly information technology can cut cost. It can maximize the efficiency. It can eliminate, let's say, wastage, overlapping, and thereby it might help the organization and its employees to achieve what? Higher quality things at a lower cost. At the same time, on one account where there is demand for differentiation, because there is so much specialization is there, so much of specialized activities are there. So the demand for differentiation. But at the same time, there is also demand within the organization of integration. Need for coordination of all these activities. So many a time in our traditional theory also we have studied that more and more differentiation, more and more specialization might have its advantage in terms of, let's say, enhancing efficiency, but it has also its own danger. That is difficulty in establishing coordination, generating more tension. So this tension that is actually created among these specialized units, the coordination problem that is actually generated, the problem of control that actually comes up, ultimately undermines what? Efficiency. That means not only you have to focus on differentiation, you have to also focus on integration. So not only organizations across the world, governments across the world, they are actually struggling for what? Not only for differentiation, but more importantly for integration. So information technology can help to bring about not only differentiation, but successfully establishing integration. That is what is basically referred to as enlarged rationalities. Enlarged rationalities. What is this enlarged rationalities? That it helps the organizations, its employees, attain something or attain let's say activities which are normally considered to be trade-off. Trade-off. Trade-off means what? If A, no B. If X, no Y. If M, no N. Trade-off. So traditionally it is thought, if you are going for this, you will not be able to achieve this. If you are going for this, then you have to forego that. That's the trade-off. So if you take into account the information technology can actually help the organizations and employees to maintain a balance with regard to certain essentialities in an age of paradox. So this contradiction can be helped to be resolved through information technology. So these are some of the important impact on the organization. But see, there are certain additional consequences as well. What are these additional consequences? See, because of the information technology, there is a death of job and there is more of projects, teams. Now, because of the information technology, we can simply say one additional consequence that is also visible is that's a death of job. But there is more of project, more of teams. I think from the term itself, most of you can understand. Because the moment you go for more and more information technology, you're shifting towards that intellective skill. So that means traditionally defined way of doing things, they're going to be undermined. So no more typical job title, job designation, all these are going to be relevant. So what is going to be relevant? Group approach, group accomplishment, project orientation. So things are going to be done through a project, through a team, through a group. Rewards are going to be given on the basis of project or a group. So individuals are not going to be rewarded. Who are going to be rewarded? Groups. So that's the death of job. Now, moment you talk about that information technology is going to bring about this approach. No, sorry, this particular reality, individual job is no more going to be relevant because individuals are going to be a part of a team, a small team, a project, or let's say a collectivity. A small collectivity, not big collectivity. So in that particular context, and these individuals are going to be highly skilled. And they are going to enjoy autonomy because they have to go for a number of creative and innovative decision making. So that means it is going to bring about which type of organization? More vertically integrated organization or more horizontal organizations? Horizontal organizations. Because since information technology will enable individuals to deal with uncertainties, so they will require to go for more creative, innovative decisions, and they have to go for more multi-skilling. Individuals will be multi-skilled. I need to understand many different dimensions, and again, individually I cannot deal things. I have to rely on others. So I have to collaborate with people who are there within my group, outside my group. Number of these things are going to take place. That's a very much required. Information technology will bring about an environment that will require this. So that means it's going to actually undermine the vertical approach to the organization, is going to promote the horizontal approach to the organization. Now, in this particular context, it is going to give rise to newer forms of the organization. More importantly, an organization that is deferred by Davido, or simply a name, a newer form of organization that is being referred as virtual organization. Virtual organization. What do you mean by virtual? Huh? What is virtual? One, when you say virtual, don't write this. This is a literal meaning. Literal meaning. So when you talk of something virtual, that means it is almost as described, but not exactly as described. Second, something which lies in the world of software or computer. That's what we generally understand by virtual, not actual. So, moment you talk about virtual organization, as we are saying that information technology is going to give rise to more and more virtual organizations. So that means there is going to be such type of organizations whose characteristics, abilities and potentials will be more than or will be beyond what actually it appears to be. Its characteristics will be beyond what it actually appears to be. Its potentialities and abilities will be more than or beyond what it actually appears to be. So typically when you refer to virtual organizations, these are certain newer type of organization that is primarily coming up in the backdrop of increasing information technology or information revolution, and its characteristics, potentials and abilities are beyond what it actually appears to be. So, if you try to take into account these organizations, first of all, see the traditional organizations, they operate through certain physical locations. They have physical offices, industries, factories, office desk. The traditional organization, they operate through defined physical locations. They have defined physical identities. But when we talk about virtual organization, see, virtual organization transcends this. Transcend. It actually moves beyond this. It goes beyond this. So virtual organization is not dependent on the traditional office space. So how do they actually work? How do they operate? They operate through some innovative strategies like, let's say, commuting, home working, work from home working, or hot desking, or hoteling. Some of the newer strategies through which they work. Virtual organizations. Basically, see, they go beyond, they transcend this traditional physical attribute of the organizations. So in that particular context, if you take into account, they work through, as we can say, home working. Home working means you can work from home. बहुत सारे private sector employees you will find, because I have my lot of friends, they simply give this ये कि अच्छा क्या बोलते हैं मुझे कि भाई their laptop is open means दुकान खुला. That means their work, they're in office, work from home. Or hot desking. Hot desking means simply the same desk. That means individually it is not actually set up with this desk belongs to A. For this 5 hour, this might be actually using when it is actually, that means maximally using the same office space. Or hoteling. Hoteling means simply you might actually use another firm, another organization and its office spaces for the work of another organization, a parent organization, or some other organization. Hotel means you go and, let's say, pay and use the space. Hoteling, that means the office space, the desk and the other infrastructure you can use while that is not of yours or your organization. So number of these strategies are being undertaken in order to actually go for working out the organization. So simply because of the information technology, this is becoming possible. So you can work from home. You can work while commuting, telecommuting. You can actually use the same desk because no physical files, all these things are required. The same desk, moment you open your laptop and few connections, that's all, you start working. So hot desking. Or you can simply use another organization and its resources for your work related activities, hoteling. So this new features are coming up into the workspace because of information technology. That's a character of virtual organization. But see, that character of the virtual organization makes virtual organization a borderless organization. Borderless organization. The typical definition of a border of the organization, boundary of the organization, whether relating to physical space, the type of activity, the nature of operation, that's no more relevant. So that makes the organization a borderless organization. This is only some part of the virtual organization. I hope till this all of you have understood. Rationality and authority. How does the rationality is brought in collision with authority? Because moment you have information technology, let's say you have to deal with the job, you are a skilled individual and you have data, you have information, you are a group. So you have to work with freedom or work under my diktat. Freedom. So moment you have to work with freedom, my authority goes. So the need for doing the job efficiently requires freedom, rationality. So this will bring in collision with what? My authority. Okay? Chalo, thank you. We'll meet tomorrow at 11 o'clock.